All right, everybody, welcome back. And what we're going to do now is start making our planet look more like a planet. So we are going to do that by applying a filter. We are going to change the blending mode to add some shadows and highlights. And we are going to add some extra details and extra texture to our planet. And then the last thing we'll do in this step is add a background image to our planet. Okay, so this is where we kind of left off in the last step. We applied a mask over our texture layer to make it match the sphere here. So what we're going to do next is start to make it look more like a sphere. So first thing is selecting the sphere. So we'll use the magic wand tool, or sorry, the quick selection tool. And I'm just going to hide that layer again so I can see and select the planet gradient layer. And then I can reselect that texture layer. So now I have the texture layer selected. And what we're going to do is go up to Filter and Distort, and then Spherize. And if I zoom out here, you can kind of see what is happening. And I can change how much it bulges out. So you can kind of mess around. Depending on the texture that you chose, it may not look like it did anything at all, and some it will change drastically. So you'll just have to kind of play around with that to see what you like. The second thing we're going to do is add more highlights and shadows. So if you look at this original sphere, it looks more like a sphere. It has a highlight up here at the top left corner, and it gets darker at the bottom right. So a couple different things you can do. First, you can change the opacity. So I can change the opacity of this layer, and that gradient layer kind of shows through. So it accentuates kind of the highlights and the shadows from that. The second thing you can do is change the layer style. So if you do that, I would suggest some of these ones that mention light in it. So soft light, hard light. Again, depending on what picture you chose, depending on the texture and the colors you're using, this may or may not look the best. So again, you have to kind of explore that on your own to see what looks best for your project. The other option is to use the dodge and the burn tool. So the dodge tool will make it lighter. And I can also change my dodge tool up at the top. So I'm just making my tool more noticeable. And you can use the burn tool to darken it. So you can use a combination of any of those things that I just mentioned. So I use the dodge and I use the burn tool, and I could also change the opacity. That's too much. So you can kind of do a combination of different things. You can apply a layer style and change the opacity. So like I mentioned, you have to see what works best for you. All right, so I'm happy with what I have there. I'm going to deselect my selection here. And the last thing, and this is kind of optional, is add some more texture to your planet. So I'm going to zoom in here. So I just did Control and the plus button, and I zoomed in and selecting just the mask itself. So I have my texture layer, and you see there's like two little thumbnails. I'm going to select the mask thumbnail. And then I'm going to use my paintbrush tool, And I'm gonna make sure that the color I have selected is white. So the color on my toolbar here at the very bottom, I wanna make sure I have white selected. And I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller. And what you can do is kind of go around the edge of your planet and give it some more texture. So you can make it look like it has a rough exterior or that it's bumpy. Or maybe you want to make it like mine has water, so maybe I want to make it look like water is dripping off of it. And like I said, this is kind of your preference. If you don't want to do this step, that's fine. But it's just another element that you can add. Another level of detail is adding in some more texture. So I'm just going to do that kind of around the edges here. Okay, and then I'm going to zoom back out. Okay, so now that I have the texture done around the outside of my planet, what I'm going to do is add my background image. But before I do that, I want to get rid of this white background since we no longer need it. So I'm going to use my magic wand tool, and I'm going to make sure that I have the planet gradient layer selected since that is what the white background is on. And I'm going to click on the white background, and that should select everything surrounding your planet. And then I'm just going to hit the backspace or delete button. And then you can go ahead and deselect it when you're done. And what I'm going to do then is go ahead and add in my background image. And I already did that. But what you can do is you'll open up the image that you want to use for your background, and it will open as a separate file. And then you'll right click on that image, duplicate the layer, and then move it to your project document. So we've done that before. But I already did it just because when I imported my image here, I had to resize it and it took me forever. So if you have that issue, you just go to edit and free transform and you'll scale it down. And then you want to make sure your background is at the very bottom of your layers panel. Otherwise, it'll hide the work that you've done. So make sure background is at the bottom of your layers panel. So that is all we're doing for this step. Again, we did the spherize filter. We added some highlights and shadows, and you can do that multiple different ways. And then we cut out the white background from the planet gradient layer, and we added in our background image. So go ahead and complete those steps.